بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. I hope everyone is well this evening. My guest today is former US Marine and political activist, Mr. Ken O'Keefe. I really appreciate you joining me on the show today. How are you, Ken? I hope you're really well.
I'm quite blessed, sister. Thank you. Good to be here.
Good. I'm so glad to have you on. Most of my audience know who you are, and you've been advocating for Palestine for many years now. The younger audience will probably know you more from your appearances on social media and on Talk TV, which we'll get into later. But for anybody that maybe is new to you, can you please introduce yourself to the viewers in terms of maybe your background in the military and your activism?
I grew up in Southern California, born in California, summer of love, 1969, on the day of the fake moon landing. Yes, I said that. And charmed life, you know, America when it was still America, some beautiful things, playing football, surfing, going to the beach. And unexpectedly, I watched the movie Full Metal Jacket, and I had no intention of joining the military. But on that moment where I watched it, that's what I need. So I signed up for the Marine Corps infantry. I became a grunt machine gunner, carried the M249 saw, went off to a war. And I did one of those things that is quite rare, actually. I did not just follow orders. I disobeyed an unlawful order. And I went from being the best Marine to the most hated Marine. And I had 2 more years to soak up the fact that I actually, in truth, was a mercenary for the banksters and that I had signed away my freedom. And I vowed when I got out, not only would I never give up my freedom again, but that I would study, because if I was wrong about the Marines, what else am I wrong about? And that's where the red pill opened up. All the indoctrination was gone. And since that time, I've been fighting against war. I've taken my oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States very seriously. I've studied American law, British law. I know British law better than most Brits do themselves. International law, human rights law, public international law, trade law. And I've been fighting against the corruption of our pathetic, treasonous governments, especially my birth nation, and of course the Jewish state of Israel, which I have a special kind of, I look forward to the demise of that nation. But anyway, the bottom line is, it all took me to Palestine, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I stopped believing what the system and what the so-called media told me a long time ago, and decided that I needed to investigate myself and make up my own opinion, experience where I would have the opportunity to do so. So rather than read about Palestine, I went to Palestine. Rather than read about Iraq, I went to Iraq. Rather than read about this or that or the other, Hawaii, I've been there. I've lived there. I've seen it for myself. I've met the people on the ground. And I've had a spiritual path, which is beautiful. I have one master. There he is up there, God. And this is part of what I want to say right off the bat. You know, for all those that think that Muslims are the problem, or Christians are the problem, or religion is the problem, or this, that, or the other, this is exactly what the enemies of humanity want. This is exactly what Satan wants. And where we do have differences, I believe we should be building bridges wherever possible. I'm a cantankerous guy, once a Marine, always a Marine. I believe in fighting the good fight. Give me liberty or give me death, as Patrick Henry said. I don't intend to ever bow or submit to tyranny. I don't pay any price. That kind of summarizes who I am. There's a lot in there, but
You know. No, definitely very interesting. I mean, from what I've read about you and seen about you, you have a very interesting life. And one of the things that I find quite surreal about you is that you served, like you said, in the US Navy during the Iraq War in the early 2000s. That's a period of time that they've made movies about. You know, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis had their lives taken for what was essentially a hoax, as there were never any weapons of mass destruction. And I actually just remember being a very young girl and hearing on news about someone called Saddam Hussein, who was a very bad person, being fearful of this person, seeing George Bush Jr. fumble his way through, you know, the propaganda he was peddling. And that's all I remember from that time. Obviously, as you grow up, you learn a lot more. But can you share your experience during the Iraq War and your honest opinion on why that conflict took place?
Just a quick correction. I'm a U.S. Marine, not the Navy. There's a rivalry between. They're
Right.
the ones that take us on ships. They
Right.
transport us, and then we do the job from there. So anyway, I was in the first Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm. I have medals that I rate for liberating Kuwait. There's a whole lot of backstory to that, but the bottom line is that's just about as just a war as you could be involved in. There's a lot more to this story, but the bottom line is I know we had something called the Highway of Death, where we slaughtered tens of thousands of retreating Iraqis, most of whom were conscripts and really had no love for Saddam Hussein, quite frankly. We used depleted uranium. And I also experienced 3 days black as midnight as we went from holes in the ground in Saudi Arabia, where we lived for about 2 months. When the ground war kicked off, we went through Kuwait in armored personnel carriers, or Amtraks. And I remember midday sun in Kuwait was black as midnight, because the oil fires that they said Saddam Hussein set, that wasn't Saddam Hussein, that was the British SAS that did that. Again, any serious historian can go ahead and fact check me. Go ahead. I know my stuff. And we breathed in toxic smoke for 3 days. Literally, I didn't sleep for 3 days either and wasn't tired. We were exposed to depleted uranium, which is nuclear waste, which is a crime against humanity. And President George Bush Sr. injected us with a raft of experimental drugs without any informed consent. So they say that Adolf Hitler did that to Jews. Whatever. I'm going to go ahead and call BS on that, but not expand. But the bottom line is, we can argue about that one. What we can't argue about is the 600,000 plus American heroes that were human guinea pigs for a man who should be done for treason, and who's just part of the military industrial complex by way of deception. Thou shalt do war, Mossad. The never-ending wars, which make the banksters richer and more powerful and make cannon fodder of the rest of us goyim, quite frankly. This was my first taste of war. And then I was living in Hawaii as a dive instructor and a boat captain, living on the beach, paradise life, owned 2 boats, rescuing sea turtles, pulling ghost nets out of the water, getting international, national, and local attention. And 9/11 hit. But I was already tangling with the U.S. because of my oath. The police were harassing me, and I was involved in the Hawaiian independence movement. I made a film called The United States of Hypocrisy a quarter century ago. So they had my number, and then 9/11 hit, and it was like, I told my mom, who became my partner in that bit, I said, Mom, I got to go. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I'm just going to end up in prison. So I fled the United States. I sought political asylum in the Netherlands. I lived in a refugee camp, literally. I made my way in because I had proof that I was being targeted. And then they came with the weapons of mass destruction. And I remember, like, are you kidding me? I've just fled my paradise life. I'm already party to a crime as a dumb Marine in the first Gulf War. And now you're doing it again? I've given up my life and all this stuff, and now no. So I created something called the Human Shield Action to Iraq, which was based on international law, the 4 Geneva Convention, and the disparity between the way we value Western life as compared to non-Western life. Shall we recount the 20,000 plus dead children in Palestine right now? I guess they don't count, huh? Yeah, no, that's obscene. It angers me, it enrages me, and that's why I'd rather die than sit by and watch this atrocity. If it was my kid, I know how I would feel. I know exactly how I would feel. I don't need to be a Muslim nor a Palestinian, although I am Palestinian. And I've seen this. I've been watching this mad world now for literally 3 decades. And it's been a bit hard looking at the stupidity and the willful ignorance of people, Muslim, Christian, I don't care who you are, pretending as if it's all okay because we get to go down to Asda or Tesco and buy our food and get our petrol and go have holidays and screw the rest of the world. Somehow I don't think God is going to look too kindly upon that. And I want no part of it. Yeah, so that's how I got involved in this weapons of mass destruction lie. And I did a BBC Hard Talk interview on that. Everything I said was dead right. It wasn't as popular back then, but I was dead right.
I know, and it's interesting because back then there were not very many people like yourself that could see the truth for what it was. And there were probably loads of men that did go and fight in that war, and did believe that there was something over there.
If I may, there was just one little story I don't want to forget, because it was such an amazing moment for me. I was given a speech in Parliament Square here in London. And I remember, people come up, they want to get a selfie, and they, oh, thank you, and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of that, after everybody had basically gone, there was this young sister, and she was Iraqi, but she was now living in London, and a Muslim. She came up to me, and she had tears in her eyes. And she said to me, I just want you to know that I was suicidal, and I just couldn't take it. And I saw this war coming, and then I saw you give a speech, or maybe it was the Hard Talk interview. And she literally told me that I gave her hope, and that she wasn't going to kill herself. And while I did fail to stop the invasion of Iraq, moments like this are so priceless. Most people will never imagine or understand what it means to have someone tell you, a young sister, that she has hope and believes there is a chance for a better world because of something that you as an individual, in my case as a man, can do. And this is like a secret that people don't realize. All the money and all the fame and the power, none of that is going to mean nothing. And all the rich, miserable people are proof of this. The real way to find happiness is through service. And I believe that's what genuine Islam and genuine Christianity is all about. But, I've had more than one moment similar to the one I've just described. I wish more people understood that and really just got infected and inspired and really motivated to experience some of the blessings I've experienced in my life.
Wow. And that's why it's so important to share the truth and to not stay silent. And it's really important to make people aware of the atrocities that are going on and how they're being hoodwinked. It's some people are still hoodwinked, people I talk to every day, and they cannot see the truth, and it's really difficult sometimes.
Are you really seeing that a lot, though? I mean, honestly, are there still people saying Israel has a right to defend itself and the Palestinians are terrorists and all that? Have you not seen a big change, or no?
I have seen a big change, sort of personally, yes. Of course, everybody that I am around is all Muslim. So in terms of that, is different. But in terms of sometimes mainstream media, what they're sort of pushing. But I want to go back to Iraq, because I think a lot of people, after all of the weapons of mass destruction sort of that disappeared, I think a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world started to see the real motive to invade Iraq was maybe because it was the 5th largest oil reserve in the world. And they were trying to privatize that sector amongst other things. And it was very convenient that US forces confiscated and pocketed around $80 million of Saddam's gold. So that was very convenient as well.
Yeah, there's more to the story. There were several different agendas going. I'll save the best for last. Also, the historic records, Babylon, and many of the artifacts and whatnot, which would tell us the real history of our world, a lot of that was taken in control of the powers that be to hide the truth from us. The gold, yes, absolutely. The energy reserves, again, important, but that wasn't the primary reason. And in my interview that I did with Hard Talk 20 years ago, I didn't get a chance to really get into it. And my development of that understanding was not what it is today. But it really all comes down to who's in charge and what do they really want and what is the agenda. Who's in charge? The Jewish state of Israel and the banksters. What is the agenda? Greater Israel. And what do they intend to do at the end of this process? To bring back their deity, otherwise known as Satan, when they build their third temple. And why are they collapsing Al-Aqsa Mosque? The whole point is the third temple, so they can revive their human and animal sacrifices and give homage to their master, Satan. This is what we're facing, and that is why Iraq was target number one. It's part of O.D. Dinan's strategy for Israel in the 1980s, Greater Israel, the Project for a New American Century, the so-called neocons, which is a pseudonym for the Jews, or the nefarious Jewish interests that really see us all as goyim. And we can always get into the Talmud and see how they see us goyim according to their holy books.
Yes, I know. I have read and I have done a bit of research myself, and I am shocked to see what is in there.
I saw, we're going to get into Tommy Robinson. He talks all this, whatever rubbish about Islam, and I'm not going to say that. Listen, I know Muslims. I know too many good Muslims. I've lived in Muslim nations. You know, I will always call a spade a spade. But what I see in Islam is that we all pray to the same God, as I said earlier, and God will judge all of us anyway. But what I see in the way that the way that Islam is characterized and who controls the media, okay, that might explain why those who lie and misrepresent Islam get so much favor, apparently, Tommy Robinson, much. And yet how much do we see about the Talmud? How much? Dan Bilzerian, somebody I met recently, he said some fantastic things. God bless him. Jake Shields, another great guy, former world champion. He's speaking so much truth. He's got death threats against him. Anybody who speaks these truths better be willing to pay the price, both financially in terms of freedom. The Talmud is the most disgusting, horrendous piece of work ever. We see it playing out literally and riots in Israel to defend the right of the chosen ones to be able to rape us goyim. That's all in the Talmud. Why don't we know it? Why don't any of our politicians who represent us speak about this? Maybe because they work for that little state called Israel. That would make sense. Otherwise, what are they, stupid? And how is any of this in the best interest of the British people, the American people, the Canadian people, the European people? How is any of this good for any of us? Is it good for them? Is it good for any of us? Not even for these nefarious, satanic, as Jesus said, those who say they are Jews, but they are not. They are the synagogue of Satan. Jesus would be in prison with me, probably, for anti-Semitism if he were here today.
Yeah.
God bless
you. Oh, definitely. I mean, I definitely want to get into Israel. And one of the things that we know about you is you're an American citizen with Irish roots. You're also an Irish citizen and a Hawaiian citizen. But what is fascinating is that we were just saying you're a Palestinian citizen. And I actually have a 3-part question for you regarding this, because I was quite surprised to know this. But what's your take on the ongoing oppression in Palestine from visiting over there in the last 20 years, as well as your experience of the people over there, and how did you actually become a Palestinian national?
You know, I really didn't know all that much about Palestine, but there was something calling me. I was destined to head to Palestine, and at first I went 21 years ago to the West Bank. I traveled all around. I met so-called terrorists, you know, Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, and I met Yasser Arafat. He didn't do anything for me. He was already corrupted at that point completely. But I met a lot of warriors. I went through the checkpoints. I saw how the Palestinians were treated. And so I really developed more than a friendship or a bond. It became a brotherhood, a loyalty to me. And I tried for a few years to get to Gaza, nearly made it in 2005. I was in Israeli custody. And they wanted me to sign a document saying that I would never attempt to get to Gaza. And I was like, no way. I'm not. Go ahead. Keep me, man. I'm going to Gaza come hell or high water. And eventually I made it, sailing 2 boats on the Free Gaza mission. We sailed into Gaza, first time in 41 years anybody had done that. I literally prepped both of those boats in Greece and helped bring them. They wouldn't even made it, to be honest. And I had Vittorio Erioni, a beautiful Italian man who was my dear brother and you know, part of my crew. He later died in Gaza. But we made it there on that journey, truly historic, a day of joy for the Palestinians. I then came back 2 years later on the Mavi Marmara, which was attacked by the Israelis, and they murdered 10 people, executed 6 of them. I've made a film about this. I was able to disarm 2 of 3 Israeli commandos. I could have killed both of them. I took weapons off of both of them. They were murderous. They're cowards, and I have fought them on the ground, both in Gaza. I've had Palestinians shot all around me on the Great March Return, right there at Eretz Crossing in Gaza. I've seen it for myself. I've seen the war crimes in Gaza. I've led a land convoy, the Road to Hope convoy, which was a miracle how we managed to get there. But the bottom line is, after I arrived there, I believe that was 2011, if I'm not mistaken, I had done enough at that point where the democratically elected Prime Minister, Ismail Haniyeh, who has now been murdered, God bless him and his family, he awarded me Palestinian citizenship in 2008, actually. Gave me a VIP Palestinian passport. And then in 2011, I was awarded the key to the city of Gaza, which I don't even know anybody else who's ever gotten that, quite frankly. I've lost both of those. The Israelis stole the passport, and the key was lost in a hurricane in the Caribbean. But you know, I've shown my love sufficiently to prove that not only am I loyal to Palestine, but I am in truth a Palestinian. And I say that for those that say, "Oh, look at you, listen." If someone from say America came over to England and met the requirements to naturalize as a British citizen, no one would say, "Oh, they're American." They're still a British citizen, both in law and in terms of the oath that you take. I am Palestinian. I am loyal to Palestine. As I've said already, I would die before I would ever turn my back. I have family there that are starving. They have no shelter. They've moved from place to place. They're witnesses to the burning bodies that we've seen recently. And I pray for them every day because, quite frankly, it's all I can do. But that's the story of how I was awarded Palestinian citizenship. And I might say as well, Ismail Haniyeh, the former prime minister, who was a good man, very good man. I remember being invited to his home in a refugee camp in Gaza, which was the most modest, like little tiny, like it would be considered squalor here, like absolute squalor in the refugee camp. Met his family, had tea, met his kids, most of which have all been murdered. The things that my Palestinian family have been through, most Western men would crumble. You would crumble. And the one thing they have, which I know is their saving grace, is God. And their enemy does not.
Their iman, we call it, you know, their sense of faith is so strong. It's so commendable. You know, when I hear people complain about their daily lives, they've got no idea what real suffering is. But honestly, Ken, I have to say, I mean, you've had an extraordinary life story, like I said, but the work that you've done for the Palestinians, for the people over there is commendable. I mean, you've sacrificed time, energy, and opportunity to give those people a voice and to fight for their rights. And I respect that immensely. And, you know, on behalf of our Muslim brothers and sisters, my Muslim brothers and sisters, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for them. It's
thank
really
you. The irony is that I'm just a really blessed man. You know, as much as I see all this darkness, and I do, I've looked deep into the rabbit hole, and I understand the consequence. I mean, I've been tortured. I have been deprived of my property. I have lost everything I own several times in just 10 years. I have been slandered. I have been libeled. I have been through all of that. And yet I'm happy. I am happy. I sleep good at night. I'm not afraid of meeting my maker. I love him. I want him to smile. I want God to be happy about what one of his sons is doing. And I look forward to other people understanding this. So as much as it seems like I've sacrificed, to be honest, I couldn't have done it any other way, man. It would have been impossible for me not to do the crazy things that I do.
And what I said at the start of the show, I mean, younger people will have seen your recent viral interviews on Talk TV with James Whale and his questionable co-host. I mean, I think the pair are just insufferable. I mean, their willful ignorance and scripted bigotry is just so annoying. I mean, how can someone pretend to be on a moral high ground, on a moral high horse, while denying the Gaza genocide and undermining the death of thousands of people I don't know? And I actually really struggle to watch that show. And you went on the show not once, but twice. I don't know how you found the patience for it. The discrimination in the mainstream media is just disgustingly outrageous. They cannot be trusted whatsoever, especially outlets like Talk TV and GB News. What are your thoughts on shady news platforms like Talk TV and people like James Whale and his co-host?
I have been calling the mainstream media the prostitutes of propaganda way before Donnie Trump started talking about fake media and all this kind of stuff. I've seen it for what it is. Like, even if you look back at my interviews, where most of them have been adversarial, right? More interrogations than actual interviews. Yes. You know, all they do is they ask some question that's supposed to be difficult for me to answer. Not only do I answer it, but I throw back counterpoints that are rock solid and really deserve more investigation. Instead, what they do is, damn it, and then they obfuscate. They go another direction. Like, the moment that you reply and basically just cancel their completely ridiculous arguments, they then turn to another thing. And then when you do that, they turn to another thing. So I understand their game better than they understand it themselves. With regard to James Whale and his little clown friend of his, That's Dumb and Dumber. I almost said it the second time. I knew I'm going on the Dumb and Dumber show. This is shock. This is just this ridiculous gutter journalism that doesn't, it's an insult, say, for instance, to the journalists that have all been murdered in Gaza, as we've seen, like literally. If you're wearing a press vest, man, you might as well be wearing a big bullseye. These people have such integrity. They're amongst the most noble of all humanity. And to even suggest that James Well and his little joker friend of his are anything other than prostitutes who literally serve a nefarious entity which controls the mainstream media and trots out all these lies with no critical questions or analysis, or even, let's go further, did you know that war propaganda is a war crime according to international law? Fact. Absolute fact. And I have the proof of that, and we can consult with international attorneys. When the people become aware of the actual law as opposed to the color of law, we will have armed ourselves with the ability to prosecute these people. And while I'm on that note, where are the arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir? And where are those warrants? The ICC, I'm telling right now, ICC, you better issue those damn warrants or you're going to become a party to the crime. You've done now the provisional judgment. Issue the warrants now. Impunity in the nuclear age is going to lead us to self-destruction. Again, I've been trying to warn humanity about this. If we don't have due process of law, if we don't understand the difference between the color of law and actual law, then we're going to total self-destruction. These people need to pay. And while I'm content in knowing that they will pay in the afterlife, I think we're not doing our duty as men and women to make sure that they pay for the crimes that they are committing in open display, especially when we get to Gaza. Human animals? Whoa. So, this is where, God gave us free will. I kind of want to pose this to you. This is why I love God. This is not a Shakespeare play. While God is all knowing, he did not foretell, I know there's Islamic prophecy and I know prophecy exists, but I'm not an absolutist with regard to prophecy. I'm not. Sorry. I believe it could go this way, it could go that way. And I think the trump card is free will. Are we doing our duty as brothers and sisters to protect and preserve this beautiful dominion we have been provided with this incredible abundance that we could very easily distribute? Here, this book right here, there you go, The History of Central Banking. This book. For the British people, you know what? You got something to be proud of over here, but you're too dumbed down and willfully ignorant to know that for the first 1,200 years, effectively 1,100 years, usury, lending money at interest, absolutely unacceptable. And because there was a certain group that was practicing usury, they weren't allowed in this country. And when they were caught doing this, many of them were executed, and they were extricated over 100 times and over 1,000 territories, because usury, which every Muslim and every Christian so-called should not be practicing, nor indulging in, nor benefiting from, lest you be judged by God negatively. There was, for the first 1,000 years in this country, no usury. And you know what? The average work week was 14 hours. 14 hours. Do you know how all of these magnificent cathedrals, the Houses of Parliament, these incredible public works were created? Because the workers worked 14 hours a week, had all the abundance they needed. So in their free time, they wanted to participate in the betterment of society. Most people have no clue as to what I'm saying right now, but it is the truth, and it's why I'm as free as I am and why I will never give up. We are selling our children's future down the river, whether it be cowardice or I don't care. If you go into a court of law in this world, in the physical world, and you say, "Oh, I didn't know I was committing a crime," is that any defense? No. So when we go and meet our maker and we say, "Oh, I didn't know I was participating in genocide through my taxes or whatever," do you think God's going to say, "Oh, that's okay"? I gave you a brain, but you didn't use it, and I'm going to give you a pass and come on into heaven. How stupid is that?
People are just so stupefied, you know, in terms of like mainstream media, social media, food, phones, everything. We've been dumbed right down. People don't actually look at what's happening. They don't care, you know. And coming back to things like Talk TV and GB News, people like that, they're just whipping boys for Rupert Murdoch, who owns Talk TV and supports Zionism. It's all part of a bigger plan. The co-owner of GB News is no better. He's documented to having anti-Muslim views. I mean, liberal legacy media companies, they're one of the main reasons why we're in this mess, because they're so bad. They pretend to be impartial. There's nothing that's different between them and the ones that present themselves as more conservative in terms of Zionism, and they're all covering up Israel's war crimes.
How is that possible? Maybe because, as I've said, the head
Yes.
of the snake is the financial system. And some of us, as I said in a great documentary, EuropaTheLastBattle.net, I highly recommend it. And I'd like to get into some of the immigration issues and things like that. A lot of people think we should be adversarial on. The truth of the matter is that there is those of us who operate on a level that goes beyond the physical. We understand the spiritual dimensions, the eternal soul. Those of us who understand this, we cannot be bought, myself included. But those who do operate in the material, especially atheists and people like this who reject God, it's pretty obvious if you think about it. If you believe that the only thing that matters in life is life itself, and that once it's over, and that's all there is to it, logically, then you would extend and do anything to preserve your life and increase the comfort of your life while you're alive, because there would be no reason to have any emphasis for something that existed afterwards when you reject the idea that you have a spirit or a soul in here. The world we see is operating on that level, literally. So these people, and I'd like to point people, if you go on YouTube, you could watch famous last words of atheists. Take a look at it. Look at what these atheists, many of whom, like Voltaire and others, many names that you would know, Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan, look at what they said before they died. And maybe you might want to reconsider your agnostic, or even worse, your atheist perspective of rejecting God. I'm not a Bible thumper, and I'm not, I have my own relationship with God, but I have a duty to try my best to warn human beings that, listen, at the very least, please don't reject God. Just don't know, but do your investigation. Have a look yourself. Eventually make up your own mind, because God gave you free will. And that brings me back full circle. We have free will here. If we do what we're capable of, we're going to hand something over magnificent, something beautiful, something we can be proud of to our children. If we fail, we will be the most disgusting failures of all time. We will sell our children into absolute slavery, as if there's not enough missing children and child going on. Literally, it's up to us. We have before us a magnificent opportunity, or the greatest shame that could possibly exist. Never mind an eternal hell for those that choose to side with Satan, wittingly or unwittingly.
Atheism and even cultural, Christians, cultural Muslims, it all seems to be a problem right now, because everybody sort of is selling themselves out and doesn't believe in God, and that is a major issue. Bringing it back to Britain for a moment, I saw you comment on the summer riots when they were happening. A major instigator in fueling the tensions amongst, the British public was Tommy Robinson, as we mentioned previously, a man whose wheeling, dealing and bending of the laws has landed him in prison. What's your opinion on people like Tommy Robinson's stance on immigration, his recent prison sentence, and his ties essentially to Israel?
Okay, a few things. One thing, credit where credit is due. Low Key and Double Down News did an excellent expose, and I would highly recommend people take a look at that. Tommy Robinson is financed indisputably by what's known as Zionists. Tommy Robinson has said that he would fight for the Israeli military if they were in a war, which he never did, by the way. He could have in the last year. He didn't even do that. He's a cowardly little. Aside from that, he is part of creating the EDL, we're told, or the British National Party, the BNP. That and the EDL is directly connected and part of the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, and the EDL are the same thing, and they've literally been registered. Again, Low Key says this in Double Down News. It's the same entity. The JDL, by the way, protested when I spoke in Toronto in 2016. I was given warning, and they had a big gathering of these terrorists. Like, they're literally, in America, they're recognized as a terrorist organization. And these guys were there. And I walked up, and literally, funny enough, these terrorist guys, those guys don't scare me at all. They came up to me, and like, I'm smiling. And they're coming up threatening me, and they had threats against my life and all this stuff. The police actually grabbed me and pulled me in through, and I was upset. I was like, no, man, I want to walk in on my own. Let these little, I want to use stronger language. Anyway, that's what Tommy Robinson represents. And we all know that's not his real name. He's as fake gets. I think it's sort of like a show now to make him out more of the hero, so the dumb and dumber population can buy into this guy being your savior. He is a little white who is financed by the very enemies of England and Europe. So there's a woman named Barbara Specter Lerner. Barbara Lerner Specter. I might have gotten the last two wrong. She is a Swedish Jew who talks and basically kind of brags about how Europe hasn't quite fully adopted the multicultural agenda, and they will resent the Jews for being at the forefront of this multicultural agenda, and that Europe will not survive unless it is bowing to this multicultural agenda. So that brings us into his policy on immigration. The best lies are partially true, and so on and so forth. Here's what I have two views on this, and I don't care how popular or unpopular it is. First off, if England and America hadn't been invading all of these Muslim nations and destroying their nations, then it would have every right to reject all who came from those places.
Yes.
As every nation would.
Yep, agreed. Yes, 100%.
Because the Rothschilds have owned this place and been instigating war for at least since the 1700s. We have been in one war after another war after another war. We can look at the French genocide in Algeria, 10 million. Why don't we hear about that? Why aren't we hearing about that? 10 million, provably so. We can look at the genocides, say, for instance, the Holodomor. Again, we're looking at a similar, that's a Christian genocide. We could look at Joseph Stalin and Lenin. Stalin responsible for 70, 80 million, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn. My point is, when you devastate countries and create refugees, and it's your banking enemy inside the gate, treasonous forces that are instigating all of this, you have no right to complain when these people come flooding into your country. Aside from that, the least multicultural people on the world, who's that? Who are the least multicultural people on the world? Let's see. Oh, that would be the Jews. So I guess it's do as I say, not as I do, right? So you don't want to be procreating with non-Jews, but you're telling all the rest of us that we need to do that. And even Barbara Lerner Specter is saying that Europe won't survive unless it does that. The ones instigating this unfettered immigration, opening up the southern border in America now, millions coming in. This is not a Muslim instigated policy. It is not a Christian instigated policy. It is a New World Order, globalist, Klaus Schwab, Jewish, Goyim destruction agenda. So, number one, I am not going to play into their hands. Now, having said that, ironically, the answer is we level the playing field so that Pakistan, India, Zimbabwe, all of the nations of the world can have a non-usury based financial system where we can look to Libya, we can look to Germany, we can look to what JFK tried to do, and then he was killed very quickly. We can look at England when it had no usury for the first 1,000 years. Magna Carta was brought in because of usury. How many British people know that? Magna Carta, something the British people could be really proud of. Common law, your Bill of Rights. That was to get everybody in check. We're coming up on the 5th of November here. Remember the 5th of November, the Gunpowder Treason and Plot. Guy Fawkes was going to blow up Parliament because those traitors were literally just destroying all of the best virtues of England, right? And we have the same thing. Now, am I calling for violence? No. But what I am calling for is a recognition of the guilt that we all bear for allowing these enemies inside the gate to instigate never-ending wars, creating millions of refugees, and then helping to facilitate them come in so that they could pit us against each other. And that's what Tommy Robinson and his ilk, they just ignore all the context. Like in Gaza, right? It all started October 7th, 2023, right? Yeah, sure thing. No context required there. They're playing us. They're playing us goyim. Here's the positive side, though, on that note. I'm pretty confident that many people of Pakistani origin, of African origin, if their country wasn't like completely trashed and corrupt, that many of them would return back. Because I have met too many immigrants who have told me, and most convincingly, that the reason why they're here is because either there's war and the prospect of being recruited into a war and like the horrendous reality of that possibility. Most of them are economic migrants. And while I am not supporting illegal immigration at all, I am not going to conversely ignore the context of why people are leaving. And I challenge anyone, like if you were in a place where wars all around you, death and destruction, no opportunities anywhere, and say in Africa where the French, the British, Portuguese, come on. We have exploited this entire continent. It should be a wealthy continent. If you were in that place, what would you do? Would you stay and die and be a slave? Or, and I'm not making excuses here, but let's be real. If you saw an opportunity to go and make a life for yourself over there, potentially go over there like many do, and then send money back home to help your struggling family, as many do, is that an ignoble thing or is that a noble thing? Anyway, we need to correct this whole immigration thing. I have to say one more thing, which will be a little bit controversial, but it's true. The number one name now in England, Mohammed. I can understand how that would be a real easy one for white British people to get really upset about. And to be honest, is England Islam? Is England like Muslim? No, it's not. It's built of Saxons and Nords and Celts. We're becoming a multicultural soup and losing our identity. This is not good for any of us. I don't care what country you come from. We should be proud of who we are. We should protect and preserve who we are. And we should protect our national borders. And the rights of the people within those nations should enjoy also benefit of the national resources being the birthright of the people from that nation. But because of this multicultural stuff, it's all very convoluted now.
Yeah.
So we do have we should be having serious debates and philosophical, critical thinking conversations, but we won't have that as long as a certain nefarious group is running our politicians, running the media, running Hollywood, doing ritual satanic sacrifices, pedophilia off the charts, blood diamonds, sex trafficking. This is the world we're living in. And we can change it. I would argue money. Usury. If there was one thing that we should be rejecting and arming ourselves knowledge-wise, usury. And if you're a Muslim and Christian, I challenge you. What are you doing to that system?
Obviously, the countries that people have ransacked are being mostly Muslim countries. And of course, where are those people going to go but to come here? I understand what you're saying in terms of, the culture and Britain becoming multicultural. And I understand that. And I'm 5 generations deep in Britain. My great grandfather came here. So my family have been here for a long time. But the culture has changed. Even just British culture has changed so drastically. My gran used to talk about how women way back in the day would be fully dressed. Men and women knew their place, knew their roles. Now, you walk down the street and people are wearing nothing, or people are walking hand in hand of same sex, or men are dressed as women. There's a lot of different culture.
You're inspiring me to say something, because I know a lot of English people in particular, they're going to look at you and they're going to make all sorts of judgments. Now, I've spent time in Iran, and we hear all this stuff about the women are oppressed and blah, 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 whatever. I have gone there. I have spoken. I've done lectures around the universities. I've met the students. I've been all over the country. I've met leaders. I've spent time in North Tehran, where the more affluent are, where there's more. I've walked the streets and I've seen the women without the hijab who are fine and not being tortured, and all of the lies the media says. One thing I see that I consider absolutely noble And I think it maybe explains a lot of why you have chosen to practice Islam in the way that you do, in the very, very modest and covering way that you do. Women have been turned into sex objects in the West. We parrot this as freedom. But if you actually look at the way women are treated as a whole, it is such a demeaning thing. As much as men and women are equal in the sense of like, you know, the right to vote or whatever, we're not equal. In fact, women are superior to us. You have a womb, you have memories, and you can nurse that child. You can carry that child in your womb. My mother is my saving grace. All of the good things that I've ever done in my life, I'm telling you, that's the mother that I had and the value she gave me and the love and security that she gave me. That's all to my mother. My father was badly abused. He was traumatized. He didn't know how to love his only son. God bless you, Father. I love you. But it was my mother who's my saving grace. We are not equal. Now, there are certain things that we men, we failed. We're supposed to protect, and we're supposed to provide for. We've done neither. We have not protected our women. If anything, we've prostituted them on many levels. And yes, as you walk down the street here, I'm looking at like teenage girls that are wearing outfits that are so sexualized. Is it any wonder that pedophilia is rampant in this country? Is it any wonder? When you turn women into sex objects, this is the reality. So I guess what I wanted to say to you is that I can imagine how, you know, I don't know how, you know, the generations, you said 5, if they've all been wearing the outfit as you wear, or if you are sort of first generation. I'm curious to know. But the bottom line is you've kind of gone full reverse of that. Did you kind of choose to go kind of full reverse and like, no, I'm not playing? I'm curious as to your reasoning.
So my gran was very, very, you know, strict in her religion, strict in her dress. My parents, my mum and my dad were both born here. So they were the first integration into British society. So they are quite British. So they were a bit more lenient. You know, my mum went to university, so she never wore a headscarf. She always had her hair out. So then when we were born, again, we became even more integrated into British society. So it was like my mum and my dad didn't really force that onto us. And you should never be forced into it, but it was never really pushed into us either. So I never wore a headscarf until I had children. And I sort of started to think, well, I want to break this trend. I don't want my children to go, you know, into a whole deeper way than I have. I mean, I have family members that don't wear the headscarf, a little bit more relaxed in how they dress. I mean, not anywhere as extreme as a lot of people are in the street, but not where we should be either. So I wanted to break that trend because I could see that it was a pattern that it was happening. And I don't want that for my children, because I can see what children, I can see, again, family members who have got, did wear the headscarf, stopped wearing the headscarf. They've got daughters that are now thinking about doing things that are maybe untowards Islamic culture, and I just don't want that for my children. I have 2 daughters, and I wanted to break that mold. I think when you have many generations deep in a family here, it's actually easier to go the opposite way and to just fall into the culture that you're born into. But I want to bring it back to immigration, and to bring it back to what we were talking about with Tommy Robinson. And I want to say that, you know, if someone is proud of the country that they're born in, then that's fine, you know, as long as there's no prejudice involved in that. And I think with the summer riots, what the major thing we saw was, you know, I can see of someone's point of view. Like you said, you know, if someone comes into the country, there should be a screening process of who's coming in, why they're coming in, what are the reasons, what are they going to bring to the country. But if there's discrimination involved, or people are trying to burn down hotels that are housing migrants, even if they're illegal, that's going too far. And the reason why the summer riots kicked off was because a guy committed horrific crimes in Southport, and he was a monster in my eyes. And I don't know if you saw, but the far right were celebrating a gotcha moment recently because he was charged by the police for having downloaded an extremist manual. And that made the bigots justify the riots by saying, you know, we told you he was Muslim and this was all because of Islam. But it turns out that document was US military studies document and not an actual Al-Qaeda manual. And then all of a sudden, you know, the bigots sort of quietened down and slithered back under a rock somewhere. But even if this guy was a Muslim, and I have said this from the beginning, even if he was a Muslim, we would still condemn him and his evil acts against those poor children. You know, it's totally against what Islam teaches us. And it certainly doesn't justify thugs looting and rioting regardless of the perpetrator's background. But one of the topics that it sort of brings us nicely to is the topic of Zionism and Christian citizens of Palestine. And one of the things that I have recently learned about is Christian Zionism. And as a Christian, I want to ask your take on what you think of Christian Zionists.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that one. Okay, if we look at Christian Zionism, then we need to understand Cyrus Scofield. Cyrus Scofield, who wrote this absolutely insane document called the Scofield Bible. First off, he was a forger. He left his wife and children for a young girl. He ended up leaving her as well. He then worked directly with, with like, you know, the most nefarious and anti-Christian people that you can name, literally Bernard Baruch and Jacob Schiff. If you look at Jacob Schiff and Bernard Baruch, Bernard is one of the three men that Woodrow Wilson is talking about when he has his famous quote, "I'm a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly effectively signed away the United States and the right of the people to a group of small men." What he was talking about was Bernard Baruch, Paul Warburg, and Eugene Meyer, all three Jews and the instigators of the Federal Reserve System, which has owned my nation since 1913. I could go further into that. But the bottom line is that these people are also financiers of Bolshevism, which destroyed the Christian, Tsarist Christian heritage to the point that all of the churches and all of the mosques were destroyed under a communist system, which was also created by Jews. We go back to a man who's known as Karl Marx. His real name is Moses Mordecai Levy. He wrote the Communist Manifesto with Theodore Herzl and other influencers of the day. They predicted World War I and World War II, and it all came to pass. And they destroyed all the churches and all the mosques, destroyed Christianity, outlawed religion. And the first law of communism was anti-Semitism, which was punishable by death. So Bernard Baruch helped finance a forger and a fraud named Cyrus Scofield, along with Jacob Schiff, Jacob Schiff used to live with the Rothschilds, and again, is one of the major financiers and instigators of Bolshevism, the slaughter of tens of millions. And so what a bunch, I'm going to say this flat out, dumbasses you are to buy into the Scofield Bible. If this is not proof of mind control and stupidity on steroids, I don't know what is. They have got these people to literally flip everything on its head and adore those who crucified Jesus, the savior of Christians, and literally lockstep agree with virtually everything that Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, is doing in its genocidal campaign openly declared. If we get even deeper, I mean, you know, that's just a short summary of Christian Zionism. It is an affront. It's kind of like ISIS. There is nothing Islamic. That is Israeli secret intelligence services. The Christian Zionist idiots are the same version of they're a version of the same technique. So ISIS, Israeli secret intelligence services, is as Islamic as Satan. Okay, and then the same thing goes for Scofield and his financiers. That is as Christian as who's the least Christian? I don't know, Lucifer. Okay. The bottom line is it's proof of mind control. I would recommend people watch a great interview from a former KGB agent named Yuri Brezmenov. And he talks about ideological subversion, the way it works and how you need 20 years because within one generation, you can basically mind control the people into a state of stupidity that would explain how stupid we are today. It's not that it's genius, like it takes a genius mentality to understand. It's mind control. It's willful ignorance. It's cognitive dissonance. And it's all socially engineered by those who have a disproportionate amount of power through the control of the money. They bought off all our corrupt politicians. They control the media. They control Hollywood. AIPAC brags about owning my government now, literally. The American Israeli Political Affairs Committee brags about owning our nation. So my nation. So it isn't, you know, as dark and as destitute as it all looks. I'm still confident, and I'm confident because at some point, people are. Comfort is a real enemy. As things get more comfortable, and we go into Weimar, England. People don't know what Weimar, Germany is, but a wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks would buy you a loaf of bread. Mothers and daughters were selling themselves in Sodom and Gomorrah of the day, which was Berlin, just so they could feed themselves. Meanwhile, the Jewish banksters were eating caviar and sipping champagne in between their having goyim prostitutes. This is how dark it's going to get at a certain point. And there's even going to be cannibalism in this country. Am I happy to be right about this? No, but I can tell you it's going to happen. When people get hungry enough and desperate enough, they're going to eat each other. And it has happened before. It happened in Russia. There's an island called Nazim, literally. You could study it, but if you don't know your history, then you're a willful, ignorant, dupe idiot who is signing your own death warrant. And that's where we are, but many, many people. That's one thing that's really positive about this genocide openly declared, because you have to be beyond stupid to not see the obvious at this point. It has forced those who have been able to hold on to this willful ignorance to either adopt a different understanding of this reality or just accept the fact that you are part of the synagogue of Satan and you're happy for children to be murdered and burned and raped and buried under the rubble as long as you're doing okay, which means you've lost your humanity anyway. That's the positive side of genocide. It's the sacrifice of the descendants of Jesus who came from Nazareth. Ironically, the Palestinians who once again are sacrificing themselves, hopefully so that us, the rest of us, can reawaken our humanity and do what any human being, man or woman, would need to do in order to save yourself. This is part of why I'm happy. I do the best I can, man. If it was up to me, I'll flip the switch, problem solved, boom. But then we probably all piss it away again tomorrow. We have to earn this. I have referred to our state of existence as a, quote, collective state of insanity. And if there was one word, really, when people say human nature, I cringe because I know it's going to be something negative more often than not. It's like, no, that's not true. By our nature, we are cooperative and we are generous in giving because we are very social creatures. And we understand that when we contribute to society beneficially, when we help each other, it makes life for all of us better and we're happier. This dog eat dog idea that like, oh, I'll step over my neighbor to get some extra money so I can buy the 3-car garage and the Bentley. This is not where the greatest of joys and it's certainly not what spiritually makes somebody special. Sanity, in a word, is all we need. Just be sane. If you were sane, you would understand all the things I understand and every other sane human being.
I just wanted to come back to Christian Zionism because for me, I actually just assumed that all Zionists were Jewish, and it's only sort of recently when I've been doing a lot of my research that I found out the majority of Zionists are not Jewish. And I heard of the Schofield Bible, and again doing my research, I first
Joe Biden, he famously said, "You don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist."
No, you don't. And it was actually Candace Owens, I'm sure you've heard of her, and she actually done a stream about the Schofield Bible and how it was used as religious propaganda to recruit Christians. And I think Candace is doing great work like yourself, and both of you have, the correct Christian stance on Palestine. And I'm sure the Christians over there would appreciate the support from their fellow Christians. And it must baffle them somehow on a global level in the West that many Christians are supporting their Zionist oppressors instead of them. As Muslims, we're used to it, and the majority of us support our brothers and sisters over there. But there are Muslims too, that have turned their back on Palestine, especially those on a government level in other nations in the Middle East, and some individual sellouts also. But staying on the topic of sort of Jewish supremacy, I've seen a map, and I'm sure you know this. I've seen a map sewn onto the uniforms of the IDF soldiers, depicting what a potential expanded Greater Israel would look like. They're not even hiding it. It's so blatantly obvious in our face. In your opinion, what does the overall expansion within the Middle East look like for Israel? I mean, what countries, territories do they want?
Well, Greater Israel entails several countries: Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi, Egypt, and even arguably up in some bits of Turkey. And the bottom line is that, as I have said many times, I mean, this is all part of the Greater Israel Project, the building of the Third Temple. We know for a fact that Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, we know for a fact that the foundation is there's cracks. There's deep and serious cracks that they are building tunnels under the guise of artifacts and so on and so forth, trying to unearth important artifacts. Their agenda is to collapse Al-Aqsa. The whole point of the Al-Aqsa mission was to do what other Muslims coulda, woulda, shoulda done if they were actual Muslims, who have turned their back on my Palestinian family over and over and over again, not least of which Saudi Arabia, which is the antithesis of Islamic. But the operation, and even now we see this, the 40 beheaded babies and like sticking babies in ovens and then raping, and of course, all of that, for any serious journalist or researcher knows, it's all fake, it's all lies. And yet we see the repeating of these lies. But if you look at the actual truth, the operation Al-Aqsa that was carried out by Hamas, in truth, they killed 400 plus Israeli soldiers. Of the remaining 800 that are said to be killed, at least half of them were effectively killed by helicopter gunships and blown up as they were retreating in their cars. Again, not disputable. Why did Israel destroy all that and whatnot and not allow? Where's the videotapes of the rapings? We have none. Where's the videotapes of the beheaded babies we have none. But even those that they killed that weren't in the military or weren't killed by Israel themselves, they are settlers and they do have arms. And they were sitting there celebrating while the Palestinians are largely starving and on a diet. So, you could half understand how you might be a little bit unpleasant and unhappy with watching these people who squat and displace you and put you in a concentration camp while they're out there partying. But even amongst those, we see the proof. They've silenced them, but the women, including attractive women who were taken into custody in Gaza, who came out healthy, untouched. And actually, we even have footage of one of these beautiful young Israeli women hugging one of the, quote, terrorists, literally. So everything that Israel says, and I said this in the Hard Talk interview 14 years ago, and I've said it in many other, when an Israeli is lying, when they're opening their mouth, literally. The only time they're not lying is when they're calling the Palestinians human animals and saying that they're going to destroy them. That's when they're telling the truth. But aside from that, everything else they say, Hamas bunkers under the hospitals, Islamic Jihad fired an errant rocket, it hit over. Everything they say is a lie. Everything they say is a lie. And credit has to be given to the Islamic resistance that have had the opportunity to rape or to kill prisoners and have chosen not to. I do not support any form of war crime at all. So therefore, I will give credit to the Islamic resistance and any other warrior, myself being a warrior myself, who does not take liberty. And by the way, on that note, I have to finish on one thing. You know how many people were prosecuted by America or England for war crimes, for the invasion of Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, Libya, Afghanistan? You know how many? Zero, basically. A few low-level little patsies who, you know how many leaders? Zero. Americans and British were involved in raping and slaughter and starvation of Germans by the millions. Never mind what the Soviet Union did. Never mind what they did. Literally. And we're the good guys, are we? We are hypocrites on steroids. And that's why I will never play this game of calling someone over there resisting a terrorist. How dare you? It's an insult. By the way, I'm Irish too. We've been genocided. The English tried to genocide us for 800 years. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish up until the 80s. So not all us white folk are the same. No, I got a different perspective. It's in my DNA. So I'll be damned before I turn my back on my brother and sister who fight. I would never lay down. I would never lay down and allow my kids to be raped and tortured and killed and my land destroyed and all of my resources stolen. I don't care who you are. I would never do that, and I will never stand behind that. And when you do find yourself in possession of those who you're fighting and treat them with nobility and do respect not only the laws of war, but you know this, and any Muslim who knows anything, there are laws, there are rules in war in Islam. Because if you're a true Muslim, even if you could get away with it, even if you were alone with a group of people that no one was around, no cameras, no nothing, and you raped or you murdered, if you're a Muslim, you're just going to go to hell
Yeah.
for that. So, like, in a world that just completely and totally rejects any kind of final judgment or spiritual consequence of what we do in this life, that would explain the Bolsheviks and how they poke out eyes and rip open the stomach and tear out the innards and nail it to a tree and force and whip the victim to run around the tree until their intestines come out. This is the type of thing that I could understand that if you felt there was no consequence. But if you understand that there is a consequence in final judgment, I don't know, but the closer you get, this is why I encourage people again to look at atheists and their last words. Look at it. It's fascinating. There's a social media influencer who does it. You can study it further. Absolutely stunning. Literally.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane what's happening. And talking about sort of Greater Israel and what their plan is, I mean, this type of colonialism, it's nothing new, really, is it? I mean,
No.
I've had some critics that say, well, everybody throughout history colonized each other. But I say to them, two wrongs don't make a right. Let's correct the wrongs, not use them to justify doing more wrong. I mean, Western colonialization of foreign countries has been going on from the 16th century to the present day. That's like 500 years. And Israel is an extension of that oppression. All those colonizers are gone except the West. And there are so many countries around the world that are in crisis because of the knock-on effects of being historically colonized and ransacked of their resources. And Palestine is a prime example of that. But in your opinion, is there any potential solution to save Palestine? I mean, what can we all do as individuals and as a collective in the West to sort of aid them in any way?
If we understand history and the power of the lessons that are learned from true history, again, I will be somewhat repetitive in that if there was one thing that we need to attack, it is the financial system and usury. It sounds maybe too simplistic for people to understand, but again, a history of central banking, I highly recommend it. This book right here teaches a history that they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know it because there is a particular group within our society that is less than 0.02% of the human population. 0.02% of the human population has an insane, disproportionate amount of control of the world we live in. They are 2% of the United States, and they have absolute control over my birth nation. They are a similar figure, a little less than 2%, if I'm not mistaken, here in the United Kingdom. They own this country. Europe and the Western world, this extreme minority owns all of our countries, dictates our policies, and affects so-called justice, which is really the perversion of law. It all comes down to the history of central banking and usury. Now, if we just took the time to understand the truth, and then we share that truth with our family, with our friends, and we start to extricate ourselves, we could use things like cryptocurrencies. Now, I'm not singing the praises of this as being the answer, but the thing about cryptocurrencies is you can actually do this without any of their usury-based stuff controlling it. And it's decentralized. Their whole thing is central banking. So if we decentralize, we could even use things like in England, they had tally sticks. How many people even know what a tally stick is? The tally stick was used in a period of hundreds of years to be able to disseminate money in a way that was not counterfeitable, that had no usury, and allowed for a prosperous, highest standard of living, higher than what people today could even imagine. This is the old England. Also, America enjoyed periods where they didn't have a central bank and the banksters. All we need to do is understand this one simple thing, and this extremely disproportionate amount of control of a certain group, which you're not allowed to talk about, are you? It seems like those of us who talk about this group seem to have some problems along the way. If you want to know who's in charge, find out who you cannot criticize. Can I criticize Muslims? Yes. Can I criticize white people? Oh, yeah. Can I criticize any number of people? You bet. But there's one group that you better not. And only because of this genocide do we see that changing. So what I'm trying to say is that while there is a million things, also be a good human being. Open the door for the lady as she's coming in. Be a gentleman, refer to your elders with reverence. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, uncle. So on and so forth. Be a good person. Really, be kind. Be generous. Don't be a doormat, but be courteous, like my mama taught me. That's what my mama taught me. She taught me if I'm in someone else's home, that you treat them with respect. And if you don't like the rules, then get the hell out. But don't you dare disrespect somebody in their home. Treat people with respect. Basic things. Stop this nonsense of the way what passes is normal. In London, it's so funny, like, especially in the winter, like if you're walking down the street in London and you're like, hi, they'll look at you. Like, what the hell is that? But then when the sun comes out, it changes, actually. It does. It changes. Like, people become more cheery. And if you say hi, they'll actually say hi back to you. Little things make a big difference. Maybe, here's another one. Homeless. We have homelessness. In this country, we see hordes of homeless people out there, don't we? Yes, we do. And a lot of us, we look at them in that way of like, oh, get a job. Like, that used to be more prevalent, like, oh, get a job and this, that, and the other. Now, I'm not saying a lot of them become beggars, like literally, like they've adopted the beggar lifestyle. And I can kind of tell the difference. But a lot of them aren't, man. They've hit hard times. They're actually hardworking people. They've really, really, really hit a brick wall. And it wasn't by any real mistake of their own. It's social engineering. It's all sorts of things colliding to really just kind of make the divide between rich and poor wider and wider and wider and wider, to the point where we have haves and have-nots and no middle class. In Germany, by the way, there were no classes. There were Germans. Even the middle class is a misnomer. The middle class. So people would be happy to be in the middle class. But just by accepting that, if you think, that means you're okay with the lower class. You're okay with the impoverished. I'm not okay with that, especially in a nation like this where everybody should have not only a job, they should be working like they used to in this nation, in England, 14 hours a week. Screw 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week or 2 jobs just to be able to scrape by. That is a banking usury, dream. I'm sorry, but it's really what they engineer. We have a way out. Let us treat each other with respect. Let us agree to disagree where we can. And let us work out the longer range things, such as multiculturalism, race mixing, and these issues. These are important issues, because I, as an Irish American, should be preserving my Irish American identity and roots. Yes, I should. And so should a German. And so should an Asian, a Japanese, or a Korean. Every people should be preserving their culture. Everyone. And yes, we should be marrying within our culture to a large degree. Should we outlaw marrying outside? No. Let us treat each other as human beings. And love is love. Anyway, the mother of my children is Palestinian, so whatever. I race mixed, man. My kids are Irish Palestinian. And I make no apologies for this, but we need to treat each other as human beings. And also, one more thing to say, what can we do? Us Goyim, we're not only 99%, we're over 99%. If us Goyim actually get together and start treating each other as brothers and sisters, guess what's going to happen to the nefarious entity that Jesus referred to as the synagogue of Satan? It's over. Game, set, match. Checkmate. Done. You're over. And on that note, Israel's done. 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 Mark my words. Israel is done. My question is, will they enact this Samson option, which I've been trying to tell people? If you don't know what Samson option is, Google it. Google it. Literally. They've threatened the whole world with self-destruction if they don't get their greater Israel. And they have this. This is what we're playing with right now. Little Donnie Trump and Kamala, you wanted it. They're both prostitutes for the Jewish state. Both of them. I mean, Donnie Trump is just some rich brat. He didn't make the money. His daddy did. He's also run around with Jeffrey Epstein. He also awarded Netanyahu the key to the White House. You know, whatever, dude. You know, like, if that's the best we got, well, America deserves the karmic debt that it's incurred, boy. And by the way, my country, just before I forget, I read a great book in my 20s called Burying My Heart at Wounded Knee. I mean, my country is built on genocide from day one.
I mean, it's difficult right now for everybody in Palestine. I genuinely do pray for the people over there. And, you know, the children, as a mother, it really hurts my soul. I can't sometimes see what I do see because it's really, really difficult to watch. And it's so important that we give them a voice amongst the vast momentum of propaganda justifying the genocide.
I did say that on the James Whale when they said, and we see this prevalence of anti-Semitism. The Palestinians are Semitic.
Yes.
They speak a Semitic language and they come from a Semitic region. That was like deer in the headlights moment for them. Like,
yep.
This is the control they have, you know, that they literally, they can twist everything. And by the way, here's another one for all the Muslims and Christians out there. Bearing false witness. Ooh, that God does not look. I don't care if everybody thinks, like, if everybody believed, oh, Saddam Hussein is the worst and he's got weapons of mass destruction, you were an idiot. Bottom line. A lot of people thought that. A lot of people did. You bear false witness. I know. I've been the target. The Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center, these are defamation institutions by the tribe. And their whole point, the Anti-Defamation League, they just need to take out the anti. They're the Defamation League, literally. Bearing false witness, that mudslinging, that's the tactic of the tribe. And is God going to say, oh, I understand, it's okay? And like all warriors, all of us who've been in war, man, you know, dude, you don't glorify war. It's only these pencil-pushing cowards that send us off to wars. Netanyahu as well. I'd love to slap him, boy. That'd be fun. Ben Gavir and all of you. You are cowards. I have never once voted. I find it unacceptable that my birth nation puts up these two fake candidates with two fakely opposing parties. They are two sides of the same coin. They are the lesser of two evil. How is that acceptable? Why do I not have a noble choice? Why do I have to vote for the lesser of two evil? What the hell is that? It is insane. There are a lot of noble people in America. There are. I might even be one of them. In fact, I have seen some signs, Ken O'Keefe for president, but I don't think I'm going to make it on the ballot, and I don't think I'm going to win this year around. Maybe a year from now, maybe 10 years, maybe 1,000 years when the freaking world wakes up. But we have noble people. We should be insisting on noble candidates. In this country, I did make a video, it got a lot of attention. Keir Starmer, I'm sorry, but that bastard was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service when the evidence was submitted about Jimmy Savile, who raped over 500 kids. And it was Keir Starmer who said not sufficient evidence. He was rewarded with the PM job. And we see how he emboldens. And he even, you saw the interview where he said, Israel has the right to cut off the food and the water. And he literally said that. He literally said that. I mean, is that our choice? I have been saying actually for 2 decades plus, you know what my solution is? We have an organized, quantifiable, undeniable, provable vote of no confidence. Literally. So those of us who refuse the lesser of two evils, I wish my reach was greater. And, you know, I even look at these people like Candace Owens and a lot of these people who have like millions and stuff. They shadow ban the hell out of me. They have done so much to keep my, you know, name out of there because all of these people are new to the party. And I'm not just the guy who talks about it. No, I put myself on the ground and fought this fight. None of you did that. None of you. Name one. Name one. I know some. They're dead. The lesser of two evils is unacceptable. Period. If we had an organized vote of no confidence, guess who would get the most votes? Would it be Starmer, his opponent, or the vote of no confidence? Which one do you think it would be?
Definitely the vote of no confidence.
And what would happen then? The legitimacy of the system would no longer be there, which would open the door to a system that would be truly representative, which wouldn't allow us to become a party of the crime because our taxes and our representative governments, this is literally what they are. They represent us. This is not a dictatorship. We cannot hide behind, oh, the evil man is doing, I didn't like that. Instead, a bunch of people delude themselves by going to protest, patting themselves on the back. Oh, we're the good guy. You're still paying for genocide. And going to a protest is more of a party than it is like, what is that? That's why I did human shields. You got to risk your life, man. Some of us have to be willing to risk our lives. Then we can say not in our name. Until such time, all you do is go and have a little social gathering and support a very system financially. Financially, we are paying for genocide. I am paying for genocide just by being here. I had shipped all my stuff to Malaysia, but they investigated me, so I couldn't leave. So we'll see about that. I guess I'm going to fight right here in the belly of the beast, at least for now. The bottom line is we should have a vote of no confidence. We could do that. We could do that now. Or if people really believe in Keir Starmer, or who was his opponent anyway? I don't even remember. Who the hell was it?
Sunak. It was Rishi Sunak and the Tories, the guy within before him.
Right.
Just did as much damage as he's doing now. It's no difference at all.
Like the mayor of London, same thing. Another criminal, pathetic, disgusting, like we need votes of no confidence. We could have done this a long time ago, but it explains why I never voted. And I see it for what it is. Other people can play games and pretend, whatever.
Yeah, I think the two-party system is there for a very calculated reason. I mean, it's essentially to control whatever puppet they put in place, and it's virtually impossible for someone on the outside to win.
Even high court judges have said in this country, like, these policies are party to war crimes. They're violations of the international treaty obligations of the United Kingdom, Convention Against Torture, the acceptance of the Geneva Conventions, the rules of war. All of these things England is violating, because we pay taxes to a representative government, which is then using those monies to violate international law. That means that we are all party to that crime. So not only do we have a right not to pay taxes, we actually, according to the law, have a duty not to pay. Now, how many people out there listening are happy about how much you're paying in council tax and income tax and poll tax and every other frickin' tax they have? If you're happy with that, carry on, have fun, funding genocide and being a party to the crime. Good for you. And by the way, I look forward to you answering to your maker. For the rest of you who don't like that, guess what? Make war history. A legal, lawful way to actually take and acknowledge your duty as a man or a woman to not participate in the worst of crimes, which, by the way, is Islamic too. I know in Islam, there's 3 ways to deal with injustice. 3 ways. Number 1, if you're just like normal, you don't have great strength, but you call yourself a Muslim, you must not participate in it. That's bog standard minimum. Like, you can't participate, or you must reduce every amount of participation in injustice if you want to be a Muslim and call yourself a Muslim and whatever, get the favor of God. If you're a little bit stronger than that, you're on the second level, then you speak against it. You speak against it. So whatever, you're someone who gets out there and shouts on a bullhorn, gets on interviews, whatever, spreads the word, canvasses the streets, whatever. You speak against it. You're going to get your head a little bit further above the parapet there. And then if you're the strongest of the strong, the Malcolm X's of the world, the Chief Sitting Bull, or, whatever, the real warriors, you don't only reject it and not participate in it. You don't only speak against it, you fight it. Fight it. Fight it. That's a real Muslim right there. That's a real Muslim. And I'll quote Malcolm X on that note when he was asked, what is the price for freedom? And he said, the price for freedom is death. And if you aren't willing to pay that price, then don't use that word in your vocabulary. I concur. Cowardly fake men. If you want to be the best of men, you need to be a warrior. You need to be willing to pay any price. You need to be able to defend your women and your family till death or victory, one or the other. Make war history. How about we become the generation to make war history? Boy, the bankers will be really upset over that. Oh, it breaks my heart. The poor banksters will be really sad about that.
Well, I would like to end the show with God Almighty is the focus. Muslims have a great deal of respect for you. Ken and my subscribers speak highly of you. We're asking me to get you on the show. And I really enjoyed this show. It's been definitely a very different show for me, but I've definitely enjoyed it. And you always have been very respectful to Muslims and Islam as a religion. So as a Muslim, I have to ask, would you ever consider accepting Islam? I'm sure you've been asked this before.
I have, and you know, I really like, you know, what my answer has been, especially when I, you know, was living in Gaza and traveling in Muslim countries and living in Muslim countries. I've been asked a million times, and a lot of the Muslims that were doing this, I know it was because they know in their own heart that this is the way, and so on and so forth. And but my answer was always the same: is it not enough that I'm your brother? I'm your brother. You know, and it's developed a little bit since then, in that if you watch a film called EuropaTheLastBattle.net, which yours truly is the first thing you see in that film. I had nothing to do with the production, but I'm honored and I'm blessed to be part of it. It's the most censored film on the planet. I make the plug for EuropaTheLastBattle.net. There is a genocide being actively carried out right now, and the #1 target group on the planet is white Christians. Now, this makes a lot of sense, because as much as the tribe may not like Muslims, if you go back historically, who was it that crucified Jesus? We all know that the Romans officially take the rap for that, but it was the Pharisees. It was the ones that Jesus referred to as the synagogue of Satan. If you go to Israel today and you preach Islam, they're not going to like that either, but I can guarantee you, if you preach the gospel, they will spit on you, they will beat you, and they've made it effectively illegal in the Holy Land. There is a genocide being carried out against white Christians, most of all. When they do their satanic ritual sacrifices, guess what the #1 choice for their sacrifice is? Little baby Christian boy or girl. Literally. That is it. So my brother, like, is it not enough that I'm a brother, has morphed a little bit. I am a Christian. I love the fact that Islam recognizes Mother Mary is the highest of the high in the female. Like, literally, she's the highest of the high. I love that about Islam. I do have a slight disagreement, and there will be Christians who are pissed at me for not calling you all out as wrong, and then there'll be Muslims who don't like me for not accepting Islam. But at the end of the day, all that plays into the tribe's hands. They want us fighting and fighting. We need to build a bridge, and let's work out the details a little bit down the road. Once we've gotten beyond these very troubled waters of ours, let us not sit here and be idiots and dupes for those who wish to enslave us all. And their Talmud, their holy books, make that clear. Should us Muslims and Christians be fighting? No, we should be coming together. So in answer to your question, with all due respect, and if you ask Sheikh Imran Hussein, he says, I am a Muslim. So there you go.
Yeah, I think when people ask you that, it just comes out of love. I love Islam. I love being a Muslim. I'm sure you feel the same about your respective religion. But Ken, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me, and thank you for, you know, all the great activist work that you've done over so many years and continue to do. It's been great speaking with you, and, you know, all the best to you in the future, inshallah. And yeah, I wish you all the best.
God bless you, sister. Really, I have admired your work and the truth that you've been telling about both Palestine and so many other issues, calling out fake Muslims, although I know Islam doesn't allow you to be the judge. I know God will be the judge. But we can all see behavior and the way people carry themselves, and whether that's consistent with Islam or with Christian values or just morals and ethics as a whole. So really, God bless you, sister. Carry on. God is with you for sure. And I admire very much what you do.
Thank you very much.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.